There comes a moment in every person's life when they must face a silent truth. Not the truth about the world, not the truth about other people, but the truth about themselves. And that truth is uncomfortable. Because inside every human being, there are two versions fighting for control. One is strong, disciplined, focused, and determined. The other is weak, distracted, emotional, and easily defeated. And the battle between these two versions decides everything you will ever become. Most people never win that battle. They negotiate with their weakness. They make excuses for it. They feed it. They protect it. They even learn to live with it. But there comes a point when you must stop negotiating. You must eliminate it, not comfort it, not manage it, but destroy the weak version of yourself that has been holding you back. Because if you don't kill it, it will keep killing your potential slowly, quietly, every single day. The weak version of you is not your enemy because it exists. It is your enemy because you obey it. It tells you, sleep a little longer. It tells you, start tomorrow. It tells you, you're not ready yet. It tells you it's too hard. And every time you listen, something inside you gets smaller. Your confidence shrinks. Your discipline weakens. Your dreams get postponed. And slowly you begin to accept a life far below what you were capable of living. But understand this clearly. Your life will never rise above the level of your daily discipline. Not your dreams, not your wishes, not your motivation, but your discipline. And discipline is nothing more than choosing the strong version of yourself over the weak one, repeatedly, until it becomes your identity. You don't become strong in a moment of inspiration. You become strong in moments of decision. When you choose to wake up even when you don't feel like it. When you choose to work even when no one is watching. When you choose to continue even when progress is slow. That is where transformation lives. Most people are waiting for motivation. But motivation is unstable. It rises and falls like the wind. If you build your life on motivation, you will collapse on the days it disappears. So you must build on something stronger. You must build on commitment. A commitment is a decision that does not negotiate with feelings. And feelings are where the weak version of you survives. The weak version of you is emotional. The strong version of you is committed. The weak version of you reacts. The strong version of you responds with purpose. The weak version of you asks, is it easy? The strong version of you asks, is it right? And every time you choose right over easy, you are killing weakness and strengthening your character. Let's be honest. Nobody accidentally becomes successful. Nobody stumbles into greatness. Nobody drifts into discipline. Everything meaningful in life requires confrontation. You must confront your laziness. You must confront your excuses. You must confront your fear of failure. And even more importantly, you must confront your comfort zone. Because comfort is where ambition goes to die quietly. It doesn't destroy you violently. It seduces you slowly. It convinces you that someday is enough. But someday is the most dangerous word in human language. Someday I will start. Someday I will change. Someday I will improve. Someday I will try. And someday never arrives. The strong version of you does not live in someday. It lives in today, right now, in this moment. Because this is the only moment you have power over. And here is a hard truth most people avoid. Your life does not change when you understand something. It changes when you act on it. Knowledge without action is self-deception. You can listen to 1,000 motivational messages, read 100 books, attend endless seminars, and still remain the same person, unless you do something different. Because change is not intellectual. Change is behavioral. So the question is not, what do you know? The question is, what are you doing with what you know? Now listen carefully. The weak version of you is not something to be comforted. It is something to be replaced. Every time you choose discipline over distraction, you are replacing it. Every time you choose effort over excuses, you are replacing it. Every time you choose persistence over quitting, you are replacing it. And over time, something powerful begins to happen. The weak version of you loses its voice. It no longer controls your decisions. It no longer dictates your direction. And eventually it becomes silent. That is the moment you begin to rise. Not because life got easier, but because you got stronger. And here is what most people never realize. Your future is not created by what you do occasionally. It is created by what you do consistently. One strong decision does not change your life. A lifestyle of strong decisions does. So you must decide who is in charge. Will it be the version of you that seeks comfort or the version of you that seeks growth? Because both cannot lead at the same time. One must dominate. One must be eliminated. And every day through your actions, you are choosing which one survives. So choose wisely. Because every time you hesitate, you feed weakness. Every time you act despite fear, you feed strength. Every time you quit early, you strengthen regret. But every time you continue, you strengthen your future. And one day, you will look back and realize that the life you built was not the result of one big moment. It was the result of thousands of small decisions where you refused to be weak. So kill that version of yourself that delays. Kill that version of yourself that excuses. Kill that version of yourself that settles. And in its place, build a version of you that cannot be easily shaken. A version that shows up. A version that works. A version that endures. Because that version is the one capable of changing everything. Every human being lives with a silent but powerful internal conflict that shapes every decision, habit, and outcome in life. On one side exists the disciplined, focused, and growth-driven version of you, the part that wants to rise, improve, and build something meaningful. On the other side exists the weaker, more comfortable version of you, the part that avoids pain, resists effort, and seeks immediate relief. These two versions are constantly competing for control, not in dramatic moments, but in the smallest decisions of everyday life. This conflict is not something rare or unusual, it is universal. Every successful person has faced it, and every struggling person is still facing it. The difference is not the absence of weakness, but the ability to recognize it and respond differently. The weak version of you is not necessarily evil or destructive in intention. It is simply programmed to choose comfort over growth. It wants rest instead of responsibility, entertainment instead of effort, and delay instead of discipline. It whispers softly but consistently until its voice becomes familiar enough that you mistake it for logic. It tells you things that feel reasonable in the moment. You can start tomorrow. You are too tired today. One day off won't matter. It's not the right time yet. These thoughts do not feel like sabotage, they feel like comfort. That is why they are so dangerous. Because anything that repeatedly excuses your potential eventually becomes a cage you willingly live inside. Over time, these small agreements with weakness accumulate into a lifestyle of postponement and underachievement. On the other side is the stronger version of you, the one that demands effort when comfort feels easier. This version does not rely on emotion or external motivation. It relies on awareness and choice. It understands that growth always requires discomfort and that progress is never aligned with convenience. It knows that every meaningful goal demands sacrifice in some form, time, energy, attention, or habits. This version of you does not ask, do I feel like doing this? Instead, it asks, is this necessary for who I want to become? The battle between these two versions is not fought once it is fought daily, even hourly. It appears when your alarm rings early in the morning. It appears when you decide whether to study, train, work, or scroll. It appears when you are tired but still have responsibilities. It appears when no one is watching and no one will know your choice. These are the moments where identity is built or broken. What most people fail to realize is that strength is not created in extraordinary moments. It is created in ordinary decisions repeated consistently. Every time you choose discipline over delay, you weaken the control of your weaker self. Every time you choose effort over excuse, you strengthen the identity of your stronger self. This is not just behavior change, it is identity formation. You are not just doing actions, you are becoming someone through those actions. The longer you allow the weak version of yourself to dominate, the more natural it feels to live below your potential. Excuses start to sound logical. Comfort starts to feel deserved. Effort starts to feel optional. And slowly, without realizing it, you begin to accept a smaller version of your life. Not because you lack ability, but because you have repeatedly chosen avoidance over action. However, the moment you become aware of this internal system, everything changes. Awareness creates responsibility, and responsibility creates power. Once you see that you are the one choosing between these two versions, you can no longer blame circumstances in the same way. You begin to understand that transformation is not about waiting for the right moment, but about choosing the right response in the current moment. The most powerful shift happens when you stop trying to motivate yourself and start training yourself. Motivation depends on emotion, but training depends on repetition. The more you act against the weak impulses and in favor of disciplined behavior, the quieter those impulses become. They do not disappear overnight, but they lose authority over your decisions. Gradually, discipline becomes less of a struggle and more of a standard. In the end, your life is not shaped by what you intend to do, but by which version of yourself you consistently obey. Every decision is a vote. Every action is a statement. And over time, these votes determine your identity. You either reinforce the weak version that seeks comfort and delay, or you strengthen the disciplined version that seeks growth and purpose. There is no neutral ground. You are always becoming someone based on the choices you make repeatedly. And once you truly understand this internal battle, you realize something powerful. You are not stuck with the weaker version of yourself, you are simply feeding it. And what you feed grows. Discipline is often misunderstood as a harsh or restrictive force, something that takes away freedom and replaces it with pressure. But in reality, discipline is the very thing that creates freedom. It is the structure that allows you to build a life that is not controlled by chaos, emotion, or impulse. Most people live at the mercy of how they feel in the moment. If they feel motivated, they act. If they feel tired, they delay. If they feel distracted, they drift. Over time, this creates inconsistency, and inconsistency creates regret. Discipline is the system that breaks this cycle. At its core, discipline is not about doing extraordinary things occasionally. It is about doing ordinary things consistently, even when there is no emotional support pushing you forward. It is the ability to act in alignment with your long-term vision instead of your short-term comfort. And this is where most people struggle, because the short-term voice is always louder. It speaks in urgency, emotion, and comfort. The long-term voice is quieter, but it speaks in truth, direction, and consequence. Discipline is the decision to listen to the quieter voice. What separates successful individuals from those who struggle is not talent alone, and not even opportunity alone, but their relationship with discipline. Talent without discipline becomes wasted potential. Opportunity without discipline becomes temporary advantage. But discipline, even without perfect conditions, slowly builds a foundation that cannot be easily destroyed. It is built in repetition, not inspiration. In fact, discipline often begins where motivation ends. When you rely on motivation, you are depending on something unstable. Motivation is emotional energy, and emotions are temporary. They rise and fall depending on circumstances, environment, and mental state. Some days you feel unstoppable, and other days you feel like doing nothing at all. If your actions depend on these fluctuations, your results will also fluctuate. That is why many people start strong, but do not finish strong. They begin with excitement but lack structure. Discipline removes this dependency on emotion. It replaces the question, do I feel like doing this, with a stronger question, does this need to be done? This shift is small in words, but massive in impact, because the first question gives control to feelings, while the second gives control to purpose. And purpose is far more stable than emotion. Every disciplined action you take is not just a task completed, it is a message sent to your identity. It tells your mind, this is who I am. When repeated consistently, these messages begin to reshape your self-image. You stop identifying as someone who tries, and you start identifying as someone who does. This identity shift is one of the most powerful transformations a human being can experience. Discipline also builds trust within yourself. Every time you promise yourself something and keep that promise, self-trust increases. And every time you break a promise to yourself, self-trust decreases. Many people struggle not because they lack ability, but because they have repeatedly broken trust with themselves through delayed action and unfulfilled intentions. Discipline rebuilds that trust, one action at a time. There is also a deeper truth that must be understood. Discipline is not about perfection. It is about direction. It is not about never failing. It is about refusing to stop. Many people give up discipline after a single mistake, believing they have failed completely. But discipline is not erased by one bad day. It is only destroyed by quitting entirely. The disciplined person is not the one who never falls, but the one who always returns. The real power of discipline appears in moments of resistance. When you are tired but still show up. When you are discouraged but still continue. When no one is watching but you still give your best effort. These moments may seem small, but they are the building blocks of greatness. They accumulate silently, shaping your future without immediate recognition. Over time, discipline begins to replace struggle. What once required effort becomes automatic. What once felt difficult becomes natural. This is the stage where discipline transforms into identity. You are no longer forcing yourself to act a certain way, you simply are that way. And at that point, your life begins to move in a direction that matches your consistent behavior. Ultimately, discipline is not punishment. It is alignment. It aligns your actions with your goals, your habits with your vision, and your present self with your future self. It is the bridge between where you are and where you want to be. And every time you choose discipline over resistance, you are not losing comfort, you are building a life that is no longer controlled by it. Comfort is one of the most deceptive forces in human life. It does not appear as an enemy. It does not announce itself as something dangerous. In fact, it feels safe, familiar, and reassuring. It gives you a sense of relief in the moment, And that is exactly why it becomes so powerful over time. The problem is not comfort itself, but the long-term cost of choosing it repeatedly over growth, effort, and responsibility. Most people do not fail because they are incapable. They fail because they become too comfortable with delay. Comfort slowly trains a person to avoid discomfort. At first, it starts with small decisions. You delay waking up a little longer. You postpone difficult tasks to later in the day. You convince yourself that tomorrow will be a better time to start. None of these decisions feel significant in isolation, but when repeated, they begin to shape your entire direction in life. The dangerous thing about comfort is that it does not destroy your life in a single moment. It erodes it gradually. It removes urgency from your actions. It weakens your sense of responsibility. It replaces effort with excuses that sound reasonable enough to accept. Over time, you stop demanding more from yourself, not because you cannot, but because you have adapted to doing less. Delay is the closest companion of comfort. Where comfort tells you to relax, delay tells you to do it later. Together, they form a powerful system of procrastination that keeps you stuck in the same place. Delay gives you the illusion of time. It makes you believe that opportunity is always available, that change can happen at any point in the future, and that there is no immediate consequence for inaction. But in reality, time is constantly moving forward, whether you act or not. Every time you delay something important, you are not just postponing a task, you are weakening your discipline. You are teaching your mind that action is optional. And once your mind learns that pattern, it becomes easier to repeat it. What starts as I will do it later today eventually becomes I will do it tomorrow, and then eventually becomes I will try someday. And someday is where most dreams quietly disappear. Comfort also reduces awareness of urgency. When life feels stable and easy, the mind naturally lowers its pressure to grow. It begins to settle. Ambition feels less necessary. Goals feel less urgent. You start to confuse stability with success, even if you are far below your potential. This is one of the greatest traps of comfort that makes you believe that being comfortable is the same as being fulfilled. But true growth never happens in comfort. Growth demands resistance. It requires you to step into situations that challenge your habits, your discipline, and your mindset. It requires effort when you feel tired, focus when you feel distracted, and persistence when you feel like quitting. And because of this, the mind naturally resists growth. It tries to protect you from discomfort, even when that discomfort is exactly what you need to evolve. The longer you stay in comfort, the more fragile your discipline becomes. You begin to avoid difficult conversations, difficult work, and difficult decisions. Your tolerance for challenge decreases. Your ability to push through resistance weakens. And slowly, without noticing, your potential becomes buried under habits of avoidance. One of the most important truths to understand is that comfort does not equal peace. Many people confuse the two. They think that avoiding difficulty will create a peaceful life. But real peace does not come from avoidance. It comes from alignment when your actions match your responsibilities and your goals. Avoidance may give temporary relief, but it creates long-term internal pressure, regret, and dissatisfaction. Every great achievement in life requires stepping outside of comfort. Whether it is building a skill, improving your health, or creating success in any field, discomfort is always part of the process. The difference between those who grow and those who remain stuck is not the absence of discomfort, but the willingness to move through it repeatedly. Breaking free from comfort requires conscious resistance. It requires you to notice when you are choosing ease over effort and consciously choose differently. It means acting before you feel ready. It means starting before motivation appears. It means refusing to let delay make decisions for you. This is not easy in the beginning because comfort feels natural. But with repetition, discomfort becomes familiar, and familiarity builds strength. Eventually, something powerful happens. The things that once felt difficult begin to feel normal. The resistance you once felt begins to fade, and your identity starts to shift. You stop seeing yourself as someone who avoids difficulty and start seeing yourself as someone who faces it. That shift changes everything. Because once you break the pattern of comfort and delay, you regain control over your time, your actions, and your direction. You stop living in reaction to your feelings and start living in alignment with your goals. And in that space, real transformation begins, not because life became easier, but because you became stronger than your need for ease. Real transformation is never the result of one dramatic decision or a single powerful moment. It is the result of repeated action, taken consistently, even when the results are not immediately visible. Most people overestimate what they can change in a day and underestimate what they can change in a year. This misunderstanding leads to frustration. They expect quick transformation, and when it does not arrive quickly, they assume nothing is working. But real change does not announce itself loudly, it builds silently through repetition. Every action you take is either reinforcing your current identity or reshaping it. There is no neutral action. When you choose discipline, you are not just completing a task, you are training your mind to associate effort with identity. When you choose consistency, you are not just building a habit, you are building a version of yourself that can be trusted. Over time, these small actions accumulate into something powerful: character. Consistency is the bridge between intention and reality. Many people have intentions, goals, and dreams, but very few have consistency. Intention is what you want to do. Consistency is what you actually do repeatedly. And life always responds to consistency, not intention. You do not become successful by what you intend occasionally, you become successful by what you execute daily, especially when it is difficult. At the beginning of any transformation, progress often feels invisible. You put in effort, but the results seem small or non-existent. This is the stage where most people quit. They mistake slow growth for no growth. But beneath the surface, something important is happening. Your discipline is strengthening. Your habits are forming. Your identity is slowly shifting. Just like a seed does not immediately become a tree, your efforts do not immediately become visible success. But that does not mean nothing is happening. The real danger is inconsistency. When effort is applied randomly, without structure or repetition, it produces no lasting result. You may work hard for a few days, then stop, then start again later. This creates cycles of progress and regression. You move forward and backward at the same time, which creates the illusion of effort without real transformation. Consistency breaks this cycle by removing randomness from your actions. When you act consistently, your brain begins to recognize patterns. It adapts. Tasks that once felt difficult start to feel familiar. Resistance begins to decrease. What required effort at the beginning slowly becomes automatic. This is how identity is formed, not through motivation, but through repetition. You do not think your way into a new identity, you act your way into it. Every repetition is a vote for the type of person you are becoming. One workout does not make you fit, but repeated workouts shape your body. 1 hour of study does not make you knowledgeable, but consistent study builds understanding. 1 day of discipline does not make you strong, but repeated discipline builds strength. The power is not in the single action, but in the accumulation of actions over time. Most people underestimate the compound effect of consistency. Small actions, when repeated daily, create exponential results. What seems insignificant in the short term becomes powerful in the long term. This is why discipline feels difficult in the beginning, but rewarding later. In the early stages, you are building without seeing results. In the later stages, you are benefiting from everything you built silently. Another important truth is that consistency builds trust. Not just trust from others, but trust within yourself. Every time you follow through on what you said you would do, you strengthen self-trust. And every time you break that commitment, you weaken it. A person with strong self-trust moves with confidence because they know they will act on their decisions. A person with weak self-trust hesitates because they are uncertain about their own follow-through. Transformation also requires patience, something most people struggle with. In a world that promotes instant results, patience feels outdated. But real growth cannot be rushed. It must be built. Every meaningful achievement requires time under consistent effort. The gap between effort and reward is where most people lose faith. But those who stay consistent through that gap are the ones who eventually experience breakthrough. Eventually, consistency begins to change not just your results, but your identity. You stop being someone who tries and become someone who does. You stop relying on external motivation and start relying on internal structure. Your actions become less emotional and more automatic. And at that point, transformation is no longer something you are chasing, it becomes something you are living. In the end, your future is not shaped by occasional effort, but by repeated behavior. It is not shaped by what you start, but by what you continue. Consistency is what turns possibility into reality and action into identity. And when you understand this deeply, you realize that every single day is not just passing time, it is shaping who you are becoming. In conclusion, the entire journey of transformation comes down to one simple but powerful truth. You become what you repeatedly do. Not what you plan once, not what you feel occasionally, but what you consistently practice every single day. Your life is not shaped by random moments of effort, but by the steady rhythm of disciplined actions that slowly build your identity over time. Real change does not happen in sudden bursts of motivation. It happens in quiet repetition when no one is watching and when results are not yet visible. It happens when you choose to continue even without immediate reward, when you stay committed even when progress feels slow, and when you refuse to give up just because growth is not instant. Every small action you take consistently is silently shaping your future self. If you understand this, you will stop chasing quick results and start building strong habits. You will stop depending on motivation and start relying on discipline. And most importantly, you will realize that your future is not something you wait for, it is something you are creating right now through your daily choices. So the real question is not what you want to become someday, but what you are repeatedly doing today. Because in the end, consistency is not just a habit, it is the foundation of your entire life.